YouTube, what's the word? Today we got Trap University. Do rappers actually influence murder? Now you know a lot of these rappers, they really be about what they rap, you know what I'm saying? A lot of them influence people to do what they rap about, you know what I'm saying? But let's get straight into it.
When the Swedish rapper Gaboro was chased down and stood over in a parking garage while his attacker
Damn, I
filmed the
seen that.
entire incident. But then you realize the streets say that this was just get back for a murder he committed the year before. You could say he got himself killed. When a rapper who left his city still raps about a gang war and his ops slide to his hood and catch someone innocent because they couldn't find him, then you can say their blood is on his hands. Now, the notion of violent song being dropped causes people to hop in cars and risk their life is very flawed. We all know that gang wars take place, and even in areas where gangs don't exist, revenge has always occurred in the streets of major cities and small towns. The music is obviously just a reflection of what's already happening. But I can tell
Right.
you what doesn't help. The main consumers of any genre of music also happen to be the demographic that's easily influenced by anything: teenagers. It's easy to say as an adult that music doesn't influence what people do or how they act, but I've spent time all over the country, from the south and west sides of Chicago, the small all-white town I went to college in, to the middle-class suburban valley of Arizona, where my mom sent me over the summer so I wouldn't be in Chicago for the deadly summer of 2016, kind of like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And one thing I can tell you that all these places have in common is that the kids follow whatever their favorite musician or influencer does. When I was in the valley back then, the guys wanted to all wear what the trending rappers wore, just like in the city, and the girls wanted to look like Rihanna or Kylie Jenner. And all over the country, the youth mimicked what these artists and influencers said and how they talked. And with TikTok
That's
now,
how
we
it
are seeing
is.
people repeat after each other more than ever. But let me tell you something about a gang member. In the cities with the highest murder rates, the majority of gang members actively involved in the war are kids. People will argue that gang members are 25 to 30 years old, yet if you watch the news in all the cities or just live in a dangerous area, you know that it's 16-year-olds killing 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds killing other 14-year-olds. And you see some of the older guys doing the same thing, but somewhere like Chicago, nobody strikes more fear than a teenager. Trust me, I get completely different looks walking around downtown Chicago now than I did when I was 15. Why? Because out there, all the kids are doing all of the shooting. Half of the older guys are only shooting each other over dice games or cheating girlfriends. These high school kids are getting high, hopping in stolen cars, and riding around blasting their favorite rapper. And believe it or not, just being geeked up by music does something to you. But it's different depending on your environment. We act like musicians don't have this influence, but the people that spend thousands of dollars to go to Coachella or Lollapalooza will swear up and down that the experience changes you, or it's one of a kind. That sounds pretty influential to me. When rock and roll shifted from Elvis Presley jailhouse rock to smoking in the boys' room and the two guys in Aerosmith taking down so many narcotics in one night that people started calling them the Toxic Twins, this immensely influenced the youth to do things that were considered ignorant in the decades before the 70s. When NWA and all the other gangster rap came out, did the older black people at the time see it as some revolutionary movement? Hell no.
There is no excuse for the
They
continued
wasn't fucking with that
proliferation
shit all the
of
way back then.
gangster porn rap.
My grandma was born in 1926 Arkansas. She came to Chicago because there were no opportunities in the South during her youth. She even saw MLK on his tour through the South, and she never liked hip hop, just like most of her generation. But her generation could do nothing to stop the influence it would have on the generations following her. My dad grew up in the 60s and 70s counterculture era, where pop culture was so
Right.
influential for the first time it made Americans question whether the government was right. My older brother grew up in the 90s, golden era of gangster rap as people call it, and I grew up in the 2000s and 2010s where I watched hip hop go from making people trap and crank that Soldier Boy to just shooting and gangbanging. The only positive about all of this is that alongside the change in culture, more people now have the insight to decide that following these artists is nothing more than being a follower. And that's because the main artists that influence the violence are the underground guys, not the mainstream ones. In the 2000s, the mainstream artists were the ones that had the most respect in the hood, but nowadays, it's clear that the mainstream guys are just actors. No kid in Atlanta is doing dirt because Lil Baby made it look cool, maybe 7 years ago, but not today. Chief Keef is not influencing the kids in Chicago to buy Fendi shirts and Ferragamo belts like he was 10 years ago. But when a 15-year-old hears a guy his age rapping about all the dirt he does in the streets and how nobody is gonna touch him, it does something to the underdeveloped brain of a kid. And maybe more. Again, these activities were already happening, but remember, a kid who's 15 right now wasn't doing anything 3 years ago aside from maybe watching his favorite streamer on YouTube or throwing rocks at cars. But once he gets to high school and wants to be cool, he's gonna follow whatever influences him. In the mid to late 2010s, do you have any idea how many kids were
Hell
introduced to
yeah.
drugs by music? All the songs about Xans from 2015 to 2017, even rappers named Xan, if you at least 25 right now, you saw this happen firsthand. I remember on the south side of Chicago where popping any type of pill in my generation was considered a crackhead move.
Hey man, big dog, I need you, big dog. Boy, look here. Boy, I need you bad, man. Shit, I need about 50, man.
There was even a kid that went to my school that made the news for knocking out an old man he thought was a crackhead, because that's just what my generation did. We found somebody on drugs and knocked them out. Pretty messed up. But again, underdeveloped brain of kids. Why did kids ever throw toilet paper at houses on Halloween? It makes no sense. But once the pill era came in, Future, Lil Peep, Famous Dex, and everybody else, things changed. And now look at where the kids are today. The guys in the hood used to think snorting things was what suburban kids did, but now they're all united snorting stuff together. When I was in high school and we used to ride around blasting music, I'd be lying if I said it didn't influence us to do stupid things. Just like the wanted drivers in New York that flow through traffic driving reckless in Lamborghinis, we used to do that in Pontiac GTs. And we all know what diss songs do in underground music. The fact that a high school kid still living with his grandma can disrespect the whole hood he's beefing with no record deal and no tour, but still get 1 million views, that strikes a chord with the other 16-year-olds that hate this guy and also fear him. People on the outside looking in think that these are just songs and don't understand how they can influence a murder. But this is not the 90s. Anybody can make a song now. If a serial killer gets in the studio and disrespects the family of his victims, are the victims' families wrong for being negatively influenced by the song they're listening to? We no longer live in the era of rappers, producers, and studio executives dropping music on the label. Any kid can record a song and drop it. Only these aren't just words. We know that a lot of these guys are speaking on direct events that actually happened. And like I keep mentioning, because people don't understand, the people being influenced to do these things are kids, not adults. There has never been an era of kids that weren't influenced by the media. During the World Wars, what did each country do to get young men to go down to the recruitment center? They put propaganda on the TV and on posters. Why are the Army and Navy commercials designed to look so cool? To appeal to young men and women to sign up. And music does more than we think. In 2003, during the invasion of Iraq, Sergeant Mark Hadsell claimed to use heavy metal in interrogation rooms to get prisoners to talk. His exact quote was, "These people haven't heard heavy metal. They can't take it. If you play it for 24 hours, your brain and body function start to slide. Your train of thought slows down and your will is broken." Of course, many other factors come into play when we discuss music influencing a gang war, like the age of the listener and as a result how naive they are, and of course, moral standing. Especially as a teen, a lot of things can just seem fun or entertaining. Music is a vague term. Music is anything with a rhythm and a beat, and some people just like the way music feels. It's almost like a drug. But when we discuss drill music, it's laying out a real gang war over a beat. And I'm not making any excuses for the young guys, but I was just very, very fortunate to have a supportive and older family to give me game. Yeah, my mom is from the projects and my dad is from Inglewood, but they always let me know what was important in life and told me to never be a follower. I might have been too desensitized to death growing up out south, but I had a support system. Some of these kids go home and no one is there. Whether that means nobody is physically at the house or the people at the house just don't care about them. And we can't expect kids to just always make the right decision. And in the world we live in today, where the youth from all backgrounds glorify the same thing, violence, of course some of the kids actually living in it will fall into the trap. I remember thinking I knew too much to learn something new. I remember seeing people cry in the hallways of my school because their friend got murdered and they didn't know how to process that feeling. And even if you have family, some young men would just take it upon themselves to deal with the pain. Again, I'm not making excuses for them, but I just know how easy it is to do something bad as a young guy and think you're just having fun. The rush of feeling like you walking on a thin line, people on the outside, they dream about this feeling. But it's a living nightmare. Expecting to not make it to 40 is a dangerous game that too many young men are playing. And if you're too easily influenced and live in the wrong area, there can be almost no hope for you. But there's always a way out. You just gotta be mature enough to see it. And like I said, where I come from, most of the active members aren't even old enough to drink yet. So do these rappers influence the streets? Well, the older mainstream rappers try to, and it's pathetic. Lil Durk got all these kids and he wanna rap about revenge. Lil Baby getting hugged from the back and dudes in Atlanta say he putting money on people. And the guys in the streets with no record deal, just recording songs? Yeah, they're influencing the events that take place in their own neighborhoods. So it's not just a question with a clear answer. But let me know what you guys think. And thank you all so much for 80K subscribers, man. 3 years ago, I didn't know what I was gonna do in life. I was sitting around, working, just hoping one day I would be able to do something more fulfilling. And you guys have definitely made that possible, and I can't thank you enough. I'll admit that I've always had a problem finishing things that I started, but that's because I never really knew what I wanted to do.
Yes,
when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be an astronaut until I realized I'm horrible at math and I'm scared to go into space. In high school, I wanted...
You know, it's crazy how shit is out here. You gotta just make the right choices if you can. You know what I'm saying? But if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'm gone.